Today we're going to try and fix my misfire problem. I've had these issues for a while now, and basically at around 2000 RPM going full throttle the car shudders, stutters. I have rough idle and generally a lot of misfires. I suspect it's either the spark plugs or the ignition coil, but the spark plugs are around 8000 kilometers old, so that shouldn't be it. So I bought one new ignition coil and I've been swapping that around for a while now. However, I haven't been able to fix the problem, and Tech2 shows there are misfires across multiple cylinders. So I decided to just buy 3 new extra ignition coils, bringing it up to a total of 4 new ones, so we can replace them all, and that's what we'll be doing today. We'll also be replacing the spark plugs as they are very cheap and we're working in that area anyway. And again, I'm helped by my brother, who also has a driveway, so that makes it a little bit easier with regards to space and setting up the camera and not doing it roadside. So thanks again to him. And let's get started. We'll start by opening the hood. Pull the hood release in the driver's side footwell. Then pull up the release below the hood to open it fully. Use a torque sturdy screwdriver to undo the force screws holding the aluminium cover in place. The screws may be tight, so some force might be necessary. Put the aluminium cover to the side. Next we'll undo the ignition coils, but as I have 4 new ones, 4 old ones, and I'm bound to get them mixed up, I'll first mark them with a permanent marker on some masking tape. Remove the 4 bolts holding the ignition coils in place with a 10mm socket. Disconnect the wiring by pulling up the clip on the plug, and the wiring should sort of slide out by itself. Now that the bolts are undone and the wiring is disconnected, you should be able to pull out the ignition coils quite easily. The spark plugs are visible now, but before we'll remove them, we'll make sure to vacuum the openings to prevent any debris or dust from falling into the engine. Now it's time to remove the spark plugs by using a dedicated spark plug socket or a 16mm deep socket. Replace the spark plugs one at a time, because as soon as you remove them there's this hole in the engine, and again dust and debris can fall in and you don't want that. As you can see, the old spark plugs are in reasonable shape. This was to be expected as they've only done around 8000 kilometers, and I'm only replacing them because I have to replace the ignition coils anyway and spark plugs are cheap. Now reinstall the new spark plugs. It is quite easy to damage the threads by cross-threading or applying too much force. Some people like to use a cut-off piece of garden hose, which you slip over the top of the spark plug, which supposedly limits the force with which you screw in the spark plug. I'm just being extra careful putting the back in. Torque the spark plugs down using a torque wrench set at 28 Nm or 21 pound-foot of torque. Now do the same thing for the 3 remaining spark plugs. Now reinstall the ignition coils. The length of the wiring should tell you which plug connects to which ignition coil. As soon as you connect them, push down the clip to properly attach it. Use a torque wrench, this time set at 20 Nm or 15 pound-foot of torque, to properly install the ignition coils. Now we can start the engine to see if everything works correctly. If it does, we can reinstall the aluminium cover using the 4 screws you previously took out. Set the torque wrench at 8 Nm or 6 pound-foot of torque, or just screw it in tight as I did. Now you're done. However, I also decided to top off my wiper fluid and install a new interior filter. And that's it for today. A job well done. So I just drove back home and the result seems really good. I haven't had any misfires, or it felt a lot smoother. I haven't had the 1900-2000 RPM shuddering problem, so genuinely very happy for the 30 minutes of work it took. One last thing that I would like to say is that I couldn't find the proper extension bar for my torque wrench, so I used this self-made contraption of a few extension thingies. That's generally a bad idea, and in a moment I will show you why that was a bad idea, and I should have spent more time finding the actual proper extension bar before I tried the whole contraption thing. So enjoy that, and yeah, that's it basically. See you on the next video. Bye bye!